Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is the awkward bit where we just sit for everyone to join.
Glenda, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you can.
I can hear you.
Hello, everyone. Just joining. Just going to give everyone a couple of minutes to come on in. Thank you for coming. Hi, Katie.
Hey, Katie.
Hi, Claire. Thanks. Hello. Hi, Sarah. Okay, I'll make a start. Hopefully, yeah, Vic is not in stripes, Sarah. Pointed out this morning. If you don't know Vic is obsessed with stripes. So I came in uniform and she did not. So she's letting the side down.
You're dressed more like me than I am, Brenda.
So hopefully everyone's here that wanted to be here. I will make a start. Thanks for joining us this Friday lunchtime. Great to have you with us. I'll just give you a very quick tour before I do introductions. If you've not done a Zoom webinar before, there should be some controls at the bottom of your screen. Some of you have already found the chat box, which is lovely, but you also have a Q&A box. So as we go through the next hour, if anyone has any question that pops into your mind, please just pop it in the Q&A box, and we will get to it at the end of the initial interview. And yeah, and at any point, if you have any questions about the actual webinar, you can put them in the chat. So let's start off by, if you haven't already, just pop a little hello in the chat box with your name, where you're dialing in from today, so we can just see who you all are. That would be lovely. And if you have already, hi Lily, hi Punky, hi Paul, thanks for coming. Paul from Cardiff. Let's have a bit of a Welsh contingent in here. Oh,
Maybe he's from London. He's in London.
Too. Hi, Deb from Suffolk. Great. Thank you all for coming. So time to introduce us. I'm Glenda. I'm a freelance marketing consultant. My business is called Bloom Marketing. I've been freelancing now for calendar 8 months-ish. Vic was actually my first client, so I'm relatively new to this whole thing. But I suppose how these webinars came about was when I started researching self-employment and trying to get some inspiration and figure out what I wanted to do it. I gravitated towards LinkedIn, but there seemed to be like a really weird disparity, I suppose, if it's a word, between freelancers who were kind of complaining about not getting paid and moaning about their clients. I just felt like that wasn't really for me. It felt really negative. And then on the other end of the scale, there were loads of business owners who were kind of going, this is how I made £4 million. If I do it too. And I was like, I'm not sure that's where I want to be either. I mean, the 4 million probably, but everything else it all felt a bit strange to me. I never really found like a bit of a tribe, I suppose, as people would say. So I just took the plunge anyway, and then as I started, I really started to find my tribe with clients and other people doing the same thing, and felt really lucky to have found this lovely community of people. And all of those women are people that I'm interviewing as part of this series, and they all agreed to it, which is just wonderful. Although Vic's probably like, I wish I hadn't bothered now.
Yeah.
crack and doing this live, but very exciting. So yeah, I just really wanted to give these women a platform, I guess, a very small platform, but somewhere that they could come and share their stories in a safe environment and hopefully inspire other people to do something similar, not fall into the same habits or holes, and just share some learnings, I guess. So as I mentioned, Vic was my very first client for Bloom, and I'm not going to make a hash of introducing her because I think she could do a really better job of doing that herself. So welcome, Victoria Searl, lovely to have you. Can you kick us off by telling us about you and DataHawks?
I can. And by the way, it's an absolute honour to be on here. And you know, doing this sort of stuff makes me feel sick. Like, I hate it. But I wouldn't have missed it for the world, because actually watching you over the last 8 months has been pretty incredible, just to watch just how you've grown. And now I'm having to like beg you to find time for me in your calendar because you're like, yeah, I've got all these clients fixed, so sorry about that. And I'm like, oh, like, you're doing amazingly well. So yeah, thank you. So I'm Vic. I'm the founder of DataHawks, which is a business that I founded at the end of 2019. It was pretty much a few weeks before lockdown kicked in. So my timing was pretty incredible. And what my business does is we essentially monetize your database, and we do that in a couple of ways. So we have a product that we call the Marketing Intelligence Report, and that's a combination of audit, of insight, and strategy. So we're going to tell you what shape your data's in. We're going to tell you who your key customer groups are, like who is most valuable, who's lapsing, and so on. And then what was happening was we were surfacing all these millions of pounds of opportunity in your database and kind of going, you know, just found you £5 million that's achievable by moving 10% of this group and getting them to behave like that. And no one was doing anything with it, and I couldn't understand. And then I remembered what it was like to be a marketer in this industry. And you've got, you know, your CEO on one shoulder kind of going, need covers, Vic. And you've got the operations director on the other shoulder, you know, lovingly referring to you as the colouring in department and asking for table talkers and stuff for the back of their doors. And I realised that no marketer has the time to send out, you know, segmented, personalised emails. So we've now got another part of the business, which is an activation business. And it's essentially, it's a done for you email marketing business. We write the copy, we do the subject lines, we brief in the creative, we do the testing, we do the build, we do the send, and then we send you a report telling you how much money we've made for your business. But yeah, works really well.
Incredible. And I absolutely fell in love with DataHawks and you when I first met you. And just I wish that you'd been around when I was in-house in hospitality. Just solved so many problems. We had so much data and we were just blanket sending emails to everyone because it wasn't segmented properly, and I just wish I'd had you on my side back then. So go back to 2019 or maybe even before then. Where did the idea come about? Where did you think I need to be doing this or have this great idea? How did it all start?
Yeah, I think it came from, so I was a marketing director before. I've been in hospitality for 30 years. This is my 30th year in hospitality. And I've been an operator for a long time. And then about sort of 15 years ago, I've moved across into marketing, which to me felt like the most obvious thing, because I really believe that operations and marketing are the two sides of the same coin. You know, we're all trying to do the same thing, except it was not like that, as I discovered. And I frankly just got, maybe it was my age, maybe it was my hormones, I don't know, but I got sick to death of feeling so trapped and so stuck and so powerless as a marketing director. And I got sick of not being taken seriously, and how every other function is considered to be so, you know, so essential and so vital, and it's always a big investment. And yet marketing's just done by committee and everybody sees it as a bit of fluff and a massive expense. And I've met a woman called Rowena Humby, who I know a couple of you on the call today already know. And we'd become sort of really good friends. And Rowena was sort of rising up the ranks of a business called StarCount. And StarCount had, well, what at the time was being, Rowena's the CEO herself now, but was at the time being run by Clive and Edwina, who happened to be her parents. And they had previously created the Tesco Club Card, which you might have heard of. And so they were a family and a business who were just data obsessed. And the more I spoke to them and the more I sort of hung around with them, the more I realized like how much they were using data to build really strong emotional connection. And I loved that. Like that completely spoke to me. And I was just like, you know, I want in. I totally want into that. But I didn't really know what to do. And I actually went to Edwina and sort of said, what do you think? And she gave me the best advice ever, which was, you're a smart woman, you'll work it out. And I was like, kind of hoping for a bit more than that, Edwina, but thanks, mate. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have to work it out, because sadly she didn't give me the answer that I was hoping for. And I just kept thinking, what is it? What is it? You know, it's data. I know it's data, but what is it? What is, you know, what is it? And then I had this bit of a brainwave where I realized you've got like all the tech platforms, like the Wi-Fi suppliers and the order and pay apps and all of that. And they're generating or gathering like an absolute shit ton of data, but they're not marketers, so they don't know what to do with it. They're tech businesses. And then on the other side, you've got all of the marketers and the operators kind of going, if only there was a way to drive frequency. And I was like, wait, what? There is. And so it just became the most natural thing in the world to kind of go, I'm going to sit right between these two people. I'm going to sit between the marketer, I'm going to sit between the tech, and I'm going to help them turn their data into cash. And that was how DataHawks was born.
Amazing. And was it just you who started out? Was anyone else kind of there with you from the beginning?
No, it was me and the cat pretty much. And I, like quite early days, I put a post out just sort of saying, I've had a genius idea, but I do need someone who's better at Excel than I am to bring it to life. And I was introduced to a guy called Ed through Twitter. And I just instantly loved Ed, because I sort of said, got this idea for a really complex spreadsheet, you know, how long? And he kind of went, yeah, I'll get that to you tonight. And I was like, you, my friend, are hired. Like, welcome aboard. And at first, it was me doing everything, and he was doing, you know, all the, you know, the analysis, but very much on a freelance basis. And I'd phone him up and go, I've got another job. And then the gap between the jobs got smaller and smaller and smaller. And then it was me and him, and we were just working on everything together. And then bit by bit, it started to sort of take off in a way that was really exciting and also really terrifying. And now there's 12 of us. So and we're still growing. We're growing all the time. So yeah, got a nice little gang.
Yeah. And did you think it would just be you, and you were prepared for it to just be you to begin with, or did you always have like a team growth in mind?
No, I don't think I had any idea or expectation. It would kind of like fluctuate between that thing you described earlier, actually, of like sometimes I'd be thinking, this is going to be me and the cat, you know, in a calculator for the next sort of 10 years, just staggering from, you know, job to job. And then other times I was like, this is such a brilliant idea. It's so simple, and it's such a brilliant idea that like, well, I'm bound to be a millionaire in 6 months, aren't I? Like, what could possibly go wrong? And I just kind of flew between the two things. And I don't think I really ever had an expectation. I think I was so focused on, I did not want to be where I was before, that I didn't really have any idea of what success would look like. I was just, if I stay where I am going to completely lose the plot. So I was probably more driven, you know, to getting as far away from having a breakdown as possible than I was by money at that point.
Yeah, that just sounds so familiar. So let's talk about that. My next question that's actually written down, I don't mind saying this to the attendees, obviously. Yeah. But the next question is, were there any significant moments during employment that made you think, fuck this? And I imagine that might have been what happened, where you were like, not doing something.
Well, you know, I've worked in hospitality for 30 years, so my 30-year career has been a constant string of fuck this moments, quite frankly. I'd probably find it easier to tell you about all the moments where I didn't think fuck this. Yeah, there were quite a few, and I don't think there was like a specific moment, because there'd been a build-up. You know, there'd been a build-up of the misogyny in this industry. There'd been a build-up of being part of a boys' club. You know, I know I've told you this before, but I'd done this presentation a few months before starting DataHawks, where I've worked on it for months, and it was all about the brand, and it was all about the comms plan, and it was all about the finance, and I was trying to loop some of the data in. And on the day of the meeting, there was me and I think probably 16 other people, like shareholders and the CEO and all this sort of stuff. Everybody was there. I was the only woman, obviously. And everybody was there. And my CEO asked me to go make the tea, and asked me in quite a shirty way, by the way, said that I'd been really rude at not offering. So I was just like, you absolutely out of your fucking mind. Like, I'm the marketing director and this is a marketing meeting. But he gave me this look of like, just get on with it. So off I went, came back with the tea, and he was tapping through my slides and he kind of went, we've looked at these so far, you can kind of start here at like slide 15, we've done the rest. And at that point, I don't know how I kept my mouth shut. I genuinely don't know how I kept my mouth shut, because I just sat there with this rage that kind of instantly came and just built and built and built, to the point where I just sat there thinking, I don't even know what to do with how angry I am in this moment. And then a couple of weeks later, I was in a very similar meeting with the same assembled group of people, watching these absolute half-wits, quite frankly, you know, decide on the future of a brand based on, I don't know what, like some guesses, some ideas they've picked out of like fortune cookies and something. I've got no idea. And I just watched them at work and I just thought, you're absolutely fucking insane, a lot of you. Like, I don't want to be here. I'm like, I cannot sit in a room with you people. I don't like you, I don't respect you. Like, the anger at having to sit as part of it, I just thought, no. So I think that was the bit where I just thought, something's got to change. I've got to get out of this. Yeah, that was probably the defining sort of fuck it moment, fuck you moment, more to the point. I think that's what I felt at the time. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that's, and I'll say there's a few people relating to it in the chat, but I think that feeling of like, I don't know how I didn't say anything and why didn't I say something, you definitely get that feeling afterwards. I've had it a couple of times and I think it's pure shock. I think you're sat there going,
yeah,
what just happened? What, like, am I in the room? Like, what's going on? And it's like your mind can't catch up with that rage that you mentioned, like that's going on in your chest. But
yeah,
in the chat, Deb says I can relate to that. Paul says embarrassed to be a male on this call, sounds an utter nonsense. I would have flipped the table. Claire says completely relatable. So yeah, it sounds like this feeling isn't unfamiliar for a lot.
And it's not even an isolated instance, you know. It's the reason that we sit there with that rage, kind of just absolutely like doesn't even know where to go. It's because it's got you from every which way, you know. And I've sat in meetings, as most of the people on this call have sat in, where there was this one day where I sat in a meeting and this is exactly how I said it. I went, no, that's not what I meant. And I got called out of the meeting and told to check myself because I was apparently getting very emotional and I was getting all a bit hysterical. And in the same meeting, the operations director stood up and swiped everything off the desk so it went flying, slammed the door on his way out. Nobody batted an eyelid. And I just went, is nobody going to say anything about that? And I was told, it's just passion. He's a passionate operator. And I was like, yeah. I could have passionately killed the room that day. Like, you know, and there's me just kind of going, excuse me. Oh, sorry, I'll just try and calm down my hysteria here. Like, I mean, ludicrous.
Yeah, it's the rage is building in me now. Coming back.
Yeah.
So using that, then I guess, Vic, what were there any challenges when you came to setting up DataHawks from all of that stuff that you'd had happen to you and all the toxic cultures that you'd been party to? Did you carry that over when you set up DataHawks, and did it maybe hold you back a little?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I suppose the biggest challenge was the fact that I started my business in COVID. So that was, I mean, it was a challenge, but it was also a blessing because I had no idea what was about to happen with how people were going to gather data. But it was quite scary, and that's where team marketing came from, which I know we're going to sort of touch on later, because I was just thinking, shit, like I was probably panicking about the whole situation. But in terms of the challenges, I had to learn everything from scratch. So I was a marketer, but I had to learn technology. I had to sit in meetings with tech founders who quite often like to use very long words and you know, and say lots of sort of like, you know, stuff just to kind of keep you excluded. So I had to find a way to be taken seriously in those meetings, when half the time I was sitting in the call going, totally, just quickly Google what that meant, you know, and I was doing that like on the regular. But the biggest thing was everything I'd sort of took, which was by this point, sort of 27 years of my career conditioning, some serious imposter syndrome. Like my confidence when I left Byron and started this business was absolutely on the floor. Like didn't know how to function as a grown-up at that point. Like my confidence couldn't have been any lower. No, I've never come closer to a breakup than I did when I left that business. And so I'm on one hand trying to kind of go start a new business. I'm trying to achieve cut through. I'm trying to make a bit of a name for myself. I'm trying to get in front of the right people. And I've got this absolute like monster on my shoulder, which is going, don't do this, don't say that. God sake, what are you doing? You can't do this, And I was constantly having to kind of go, I can. And everything was pressing this like massive like rejection button for me all the time. Because if I sent somebody an email and said, do you want me to tell you about my new business? And they went no, or just didn't reply, there's the rejection button again, like every single time. And I was constantly battling. It was like I had this like whirlwind of just shit thoughts that was constantly there, and I was constantly having to go, stop, just let me do something. And I think back to those times and how hard it was. And I don't know how I got through it looking back on it. But even now, 3 years into it, probably it's been in the last few weeks that I can go, I've stepped away from it. And in fact, Maisie, who's my coach, literally commented this week and said, you've changed so much even lately. She was like, you're no longer running that business with fear. She was like, I can sense the fear's gone. And that's taken 3 years for that to go. So yeah, I mean, even now, I still have the moments of just being like, but yeah, I'm definitely getting on top of it. And I'll never be in the place I was when I was employed by businesses like Byron.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned Maisie, and for the benefit of everyone on the call, can you tell us who Maisie is and what she does for you at DataHawks?
Maisie's in our 18. So Maisie is my coach. I was introduced to her, I think in 2017. And she's the person that I say this a lot, but Maisie helps me remember who I am when I've forgotten. So if I'm sitting there and I'm just like, I can't do this, like I cannot go any further with this, I can't do this, I'm like, who can I turn to? And I go to Maisie, and via Zoom, she gives me a bit of a slap around the face. She reminds me of all the stuff that I can do. She sends me on my way with loads of stuff to, loads of strategies and techniques and thoughts to keep in my head. And she's brilliant at coming out with a brilliant sort of soundbite that will never leave your brain again, sort of thing. And I spend an hour on the phone with Maisie, and I come off it kind of just thinking, Jesus Christ, I'm immense, but of course I can do this. Of course I can. And I've seen I think I've seen the impact of her so much that we've got that now within the business. So all of the team get sessions with Maisie every month because your personal life and your business life, everything's just all connected. It's all like part of the same thing. And the stuff at work can press personal buttons and vice versa. And she's there just to help us challenge ourselves and stretch ourselves and grow. And the perspective that you get, like the team just adore her. The team just all like, be Maisie today. Like it's like having a massage, but in your brain. It's just, I know, she's wonderful. It's wonderful. She's totally in the 18. Wouldn't want to run this business without Maisie on my speed dial.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess that's one of the differences I suppose you've made since you left employment, is to make sure that you don't end up with a similar culture that you were part of before. How do you, as well as Maisie, how do you ensure that the culture that you're building at DataHawks is a positive one and an open one?
Yeah, when I started this business, in fact, I went far too far the other way, because when I started this business, I was so determined that nobody would have the kind of experience that I've had in the past at multiple businesses. It's not just one-off. In fact, the businesses that aren't toxic in this industry are probably much fewer than the businesses that are, because I've heard this story so many times. And I went so far the other way in trying to create the most wonderful environment for people to feel, incredibly relaxed and be able to be themselves, that in many ways I kind of went too far and didn't put sort of like firm enough boundaries in place or strong enough expectation. And we've been kind of working through that, lately, of how do we find that middle balance, because I'd kind of gone so far the other way. I was like, this is not how, you can't run a business like this. So now we've kind of pulled everything back to the middle. But sometimes having a positive like culture also leads to some really tough decisions. So, you know, I've made tough decisions in the last couple of weeks about this business to protect the positivity and make sure we're moving forward, first of all, as a business, because if we're not a viable business, then 12 people's rent and mortgage don't get paid. But also, how do we thrive within it, and how do we grow, and how are we all heard? And sometimes you have to spot things and kind of make tough calls in order to, you know, in order to protect that. So I'd love to say it just happens really, you know, easily, and we all just sit there smiling all day and high-fiving each other, and we do. You know, this is an incredible bunch of people, and we love spending time together. But also, there's quite a lot of work and effort in making sure that that's the culture that, you know, you are perpetuating, because it's so easy for the other stuff to kick in and infiltrate. The toxicity comes from nowhere.
God, it's so interesting. It just makes I flip between sometimes. Do I just want to stay a freelancer, or do I want to grow this business and bring people on board? And that's the bit that terrifies me, is managing people and then having to be responsible for as well. And it fries my brain a bit. So
fries mine as well. It's just too late for me, Glenda. I've done it.
Do you ever have a moment now where you wish that you were back in employment, to get rid of that responsibility, I suppose, and just turn up for work, get paid? Do you ever feel like that?
Never, not once. I was talking to Rowena about this a few weeks ago, and she said, you could make this stop. And I went, nah, you know, there's no way. But also, I couldn't go back because I am unemployable now. So I couldn't go back to being employed. So even if I sat here now and thought, you know what, I will get a nice job and get a bit of holiday pay and have a break. I've heard breaks are good and people have those. Let's see if I can get one of those. I don't know who would employ me now. Like I've come so far out of my box. I'm like one of those like IKEA bags where it's impossible to get it back in the shape that it started. So I don't think anybody's going to employ me anytime soon anyway. So no, I don't think about it. It's not an option.
Yeah. And this is so common with everyone that I've interviewed so far, and all of the women that you'll meet on this series if you come to the rest of them. Everyone says the same thing. They can't go back now. They find it too difficult. It'd be too mundane almost, and a bit like they've become used to doing everything, and then to just be pigeonholed back into one like responsibility. Yeah. It's almost like a bit addictive, I guess.
It's a bit like as well living in a house. So like if let's say you live in a flat and then you move into a house where there's lots of freedom and there's lots of space and you're doing it and you're living it and you're your own boss and all the stuff that goes with it. It's a bit like go and live back in that house. It's like you could, but in that flat, you've outgrown the flat, you know, you've got too much stuff and it's impossible to go back because you've outgrown the space. You know, I mean, you would if you really had to, you know, but it wouldn't be comfortable and you'd have to box up so many parts of your new life to fit within it. I don't intend to do that.
The things I love about you, Vic, is your analogies. When you teach me on something, you come out with these amazing analogies and it just, my brain go, oh yeah. So what makes you unemployable then, Vic? The title of today's webinar, what is it? Let's be specific.
Well, I think first of all, there's an authenticity that you can have when you work for yourself in a way that you can't in a business. So that makes me unemployable, because part of that authenticity means that I am going to call you out on stuff. I am going to call out toxicity. I am going to challenge stuff. I am going to question why somebody's my boss and they're not even as competent as I am. Like I am going to call that stuff out. I'm not going to be able to be restricted by, quite frankly, mediocre leaders who I've worked for that I don't know how they keep getting the top jobs. I don't know how they're still doing the rounds, some of them, but they are, and they just keep getting handed the keys to business after business. I can't be restricted by that anymore. I can't keep my mouth shut. You know, I can't see stuff going on and not say something and call it out and go, why aren't we doing something about that? I can't. And even things like being feisty. One of my bosses said something about, I love how feisty you are, Vic. And I was like, oh yeah, great. But they didn't want me to be. They wanted me to be feisty with other people. They just didn't want me to be feisty with them. And now I kind of realise that, you know, this is who I am, and you're either going to get this or you're going to get nothing, but you're not going to get a watered down, or edited or redacted version of, because I've been around the block too much. I'm too old and I'm too angry, so I'm just unemployable. Just frankly unemployable now, Glenda. And also they never give you a MacBook, they always make you work on PC. So I've just refused. I can't. I'm unemployable.
Amazing. Can we talk a little bit about mental load? You and I talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
And how, I guess, being a woman, because of that mental load, and I'm not saying people don't have this mental load or other genders don't have this mental load, but speaking from experience as a woman, do you feel like that's put you on a back foot with DataHawks and the way that you run your business?
I do. So I presented a thing about, I think it was like last November, and it was for Plan B, who are now called Balance the Board. So Emma Causer, Holly Addison, and Anne Elliott was part of the original founding of the business. And now it's run by Emma Causer and Holly Addison. And they'd done like a survey of women in hospitality and asked them a ton of questions. And because there was data involved, they said, can you present the findings of the survey? And I was shocked. I mean, I was genuinely shocked by some of the answers that people gave. And I think that I'd spend so much time thinking things were normal and normalizing stuff in my head. And everybody's afraid to talk to each other. Everybody's afraid to say to each other, that this is happening to me. I'm on the receiving end of this. I'm worrying about this. And because we've got this kind of culture, like I read the survey and I recognized so much of myself in it, first of all, but I was genuinely shocked, like how many people felt the same way. And I will caveat some of what I'm about to say, which is, you've got a really young child. Like we've said this before, I do not know how you do it. I've got a 25-year-old and I find that exhausting. So I don't know how people run businesses with really young children. But if you think of the mental load as, and Maisie, this is a Maisieism, like the mental load, and what that includes, it might include things like, generally speaking, be the woman that remembers things like vaccinations, or, are we going to visit the in-laws? Did we get the birthday card? Did we remember that thing? And even if you've got the most incredibly hands-on partner, whether that's male or female, there's generally going to be one person in that relationship that does a lot of the thinking and a lot of the remembering and a lot of the organizing, So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is around safety. So in this survey, it was something like 36% of women in hospitality are still getting regular sexual harassment. And I was like, how is this possible? Like now, how is this possible? But equally, I was remembering how one of the first things I taught my daughter was not how to be really strong and brave, or not how to, build great relationships. It was how to hold your keys in your fingers when you're walking home from the bus stop, just in case somebody jumps you, or how to make sure you take your AirPods out, just so you can be like, have your wits around you and stuff. There's stuff like that constant worry, especially if you're a mother. It's impossible to turn off. Like it is just impossible. No matter how distracted you think you are, there is always a percentage of your brain that's doing it. I still do it now. My daughter's 25. I check her on Find My Friends constantly just to make sure she's not in a ditch somewhere, So it never ever leaves you. When you think of the boys' club, of hospitality. So I've been the only female on a board of a hospitality business where they have gone off and had a pre-meeting the night before the board meeting to make sure that they're all nicely aligned and have patted each other's backs and had a nice old time. And what I'm about to hear, I'm hearing for the first time, and they've all discussed it and agreed it, and now are ganging up on me. And even things like family stuff, so the older you get, especially if you're the oldest child, for instance, there's your parents are getting older, they're getting iller, there's stuff going on. And I think there's so much of this stuff. Hormones, that's just reminded me, women spend at least 1 week of a month often feeling quite shit. You can't even mention that out loud, but for fear of anybody sort of going, well, if you're not absolutely raring to go, you can't mention that you feel absolutely shit. There's stuff like endometriosis, there's menopause, there's perimenopause, there's all of this stuff And if all of this stuff combined, even just added up to 5% of your brain capacity, and I would say it was a lot more, because for me it's a lot more than 5%, but even if it only added up to 5% of your brain capacity, that means that you were constantly at a 5% disadvantage. And as you go through your career, that 5% is getting compounded and further compounded. So by the time you're sort of, let's say, ready to take on some of the big roles, you're so on the back foot, the gap between you and your male counterparts has become so wide, it's almost unfathomable to think how you'd ever overcome that, and how much work you've got to do. And I know this is true because somebody was telling me recently about a woman that had been headhunted in a business to take over a person who was leaving his job. And this person who was leaving went to this woman and went, this job is right up your street. And she thought about it and came back and said, I don't think I've got the mental capacity for this. I've got a family, I've got stuff going on, didn't mention anything else other than family, but I can't give 100% of this because of all the stuff I've got going on. And the man that eventually got the job, this woman who was handing it over said, what did your family say about the job? And he said, I don't know, I didn't ask them. Didn't occur to me to ask them whether that was going to be a thing. So this is the gap that kind of grows. And it starts off, in your early days of your career, and it's a little bit of a gap. And then it suddenly does this. By the time you're going for the big jobs, that's a massive chasm to cross. But I think that mental load that women carry is huge. I think it's absolutely massive, whether you're in employment or your own business or not.
Yeah, I've definitely been feeling the mental load since we had our son. He's 2, but it for me it's the switch between the two things, because I knew that I wanted to work and I wanted to come back to work, and I know everyone has their own ideas and the way that they like to live their lives, and some people don't want to work again, but I felt like I had this itch I wanted to scratch with self-employment, and I knew I wanted to do that. But for me it's the switch between, like, I'm in work mode now and I'm really interested in all of this stuff that's going on, and I'm getting loads of stuff done and I feel like I'm accomplishing stuff, to I've got to go pick him up from nursery now, and then I've got to play. And then I find that switch really uncomfortable and a little bit, oh God, how do I, and now I'm a different person, and it's really difficult. So yeah, that mental load stuff really makes sense to me.
Glenda, last weekend I was at a family party like 2 weekends ago, and at the end of the party it was like an afternoon event, and there was kids galore there, and it was really lovely, like little afternoon do. And at the end, as the event was winding down, I looked around me and the women were all off their feet. They were gathering the stuff, they were scraping stuff, they were tidying, they were sweeping the party poppers off the floor. They were all running around doing that, while the men all sat there with a beer discussing how busy they were and how hard their lives were. And I was like just sitting there just thinking, I didn't even know what to do with it. So I just kind of went round and went, some stuff for you to do. Like, I think I just went and like shoved dustpan and bushes into people's laps and went, there you go, over there. But the fact that it was the women that automatically just went, because like that's what our programming does. Like, we've relaxed for an hour now, let's tidy up after it. And you just see it, you see it constantly. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that is all weighing on your ability to run your business or your ability to succeed if you're employed.
So interesting. Right, let's move on to advice. So, as a founder, what are your, if it doesn't have to be 3, not to put you on the spot, but what are your top pieces of advice for anyone that's looking to start a business, go freelance, make that step? What would you say to them?
I'm wondering if anybody's thinking, why would we take advice from her? She's unemployable. But if you're into that kind of advice, I think the first thing is around, if you start your business, you are going to spend a lot of time thinking that you can't do it and saying to yourself, I can't do this. Can I do this? Have I got it in me to do this? That's going to be like on loop in your head, because it's still on loop in mine. But the answer is yes, you can do it, because you are doing it. So, and again, this is an amazing thing. Like, I've sat there going, I can't run this business, I can't do all this stuff. And she's gone, you literally are. Like, it's happening. Look, you're doing it. Like, those clients are there. Those humans in your team are there, So even if you're telling yourself or asking yourself, can I do it? Can I do it? Can I do it? Yes, you can. You might have to work out where support comes from and what your gaps are, but you can do it. You can absolutely do it. I think the second thing is about growth. So I've probably grown more in the last 3 months than I've grown in the last 2 years of this business. The first year was a trajectory that kind of went like this. Then it was like this. And then this last 3 months it's been a tough 3 months. And my learning has gone like this, but equally so as my growth. And there have been times when that's been absolutely incredible. And I've never felt more exhilarated and happy with that growth. And there are times when I have sat in a room and I've just gone, I've got half an hour, I'm going to have a sob, because I did with you, didn't I? I sat in a call with you a couple of weeks ago and just burst into tears because it was just all too much. So you're going to grow. You're going to grow a lot, and sometimes that growth is going to be, it's going to be deeply uncomfortable and make you cry all the tears. And that probably leads me to the third tip, which I have still never managed to work out for myself yet. So I just hope other people can, which is you've got to find your out. You've got to find what's your brain rest? How do you stop yourself becoming obsessed with your business? Because you do, because sometimes you're in it so much, you're dreaming about it, you're thinking about it, and you're not resting, and you're not giving yourself time to just be. So Sarah, who's on this call, is now taken to texting me on Thursday night to make sure I'm going to yoga because I just can't seem to do it. I can't seem to just find time. I go on holiday, take my MacBook and spend all week working just in a slightly hotter place. So I think what I failed to do, and I'm working on desperately at the moment, is where's the out, where's the rest, where's my downtime, where's the time for me to think about the business, on a bigger scale, but also where's the time to just go, I'm going to put myself first, for the first time ever. So I think they'd be my tips. Do better than I've done, basically.
But the rest and the time away is difficult, isn't it? Because you've got a responsibility and you've got 12 people that work for you. I've spoken to someone else recently who said, like, you want to be the business that exists in 10 years' time. And yeah, there's a huge responsibility because everyone that works for you has a mortgage, potentially, or rent to pay, or maybe a family, or they've got responsibility. So
and there's fear, Glenda, as well. I'm so sorry you went quiet. I thought you stopped speaking because you went quiet. I'm so sorry. I mean to talk over you. It's the fear thing as well, because I've spent so long employed where if I've taken a holiday, I've been frightened if I come back, will I have a job? Or if I go into a meeting, has there been a pre-meeting? I've lived my entire career in fight or flight, basically. And it's really hard to undo that and go, nobody can sack me in this business. I'm going to go away. And then I think, well, I can't sack me, but the clients can all leave, because I'm constantly in that fight or flight that I've spent 27 years, running my career through. So you have to kind of force yourself through that, but that takes some doing, because that's nearly 3 decades of conditioning, and that's not going to be overcome easily.
Oh.
Should we all go and watch Barbie at the end of this and share ourselves up? That's about the patriarchy as well. No, that's not.
So where do you get your inspiration from, Vic, to keep going? Are there any podcasts, books, anything that you'd recommend?
I'm a fan of Gary Vee. I love listening to Gary Vee because I think he's painted as being like, he's a bit of a maniac and he's a bit of a sort of gobshite. And actually his thinking is really, really sound. And he's done it. Like, he doesn't just give loads of advice. He runs a massive marketing agency with multi-million-pound turnover. So I love listening to him. I really love Malcolm Gladwell because I love how he thinks differently. And there's a podcast called Revisionist History. It's like on season 9 now, but he takes something, whether it's a moment in history or a product or an idea or whatever, and he just completely looks at it, in a completely different way. And I've learned a huge amount from that, and it trains my brain to kind of not just keep going forward, to just go, oh, wait, what? I'll go somewhere else. I'm inspired by everybody around me. Like, I think there are so many incredible people just around me. And I'm inspired by this constantly. I'm really inspired by my team. There's some really young people in my team. And I just sit and lap up the stuff that they tell me and share with me daily. But I think probably the biggest learning and stuff is just by doing it, because I've read every book about how to start a business. I've listened to all the podcasts. Nothing could have prepared me for the actual reality of it's happening now. You're in it. So every day is a school day, basically.
You made that sound like having a baby, because I read all the books.
Yeah.
But it's like there's no manual for this stuff, is there? And it's all down to you get to the buck stops with you, whether it's parenting or running a business. It's kind of the same thing, I guess.
Exactly.
Talking of inspiration with people around you, you run a couple of WhatsApp communities. Can you tell us about those, and if anyone would like to join, what they need to do?
I do. I'm really proud of these little communities. So
Amazing.
so it started with team marketing, and I said at the start that during lockdown, I basically had a bit of a cry one day, just thinking, what have I done? I've started a business and it's lockdown. I was feeling emotional. And I'd put this on LinkedIn, and somebody had messaged me and gone, I'm feeling the same. And I said, look, I'll just add you on WhatsApp and like we can have a little cry together. And then I feel like a couple of other people came and said, can I join the crying group? And I was like, okay, like, you know, totally normal thing to happen in lockdown. So it was like fine. And it just built and built and built. And then when lockdown got to an end, I thought, well, it will just go now, but it didn't. And it's got even more crazy. And now there's like 460 people in it or something. So it's hospitality marketers or marketing suppliers. And it is the most, I mean, sometimes you need to mute it because it's just relentless, but it's just the most lovely community. And I genuinely think that group is responsible for changing the way we market in this industry, because before we were so kind of like, oh, what are your Mother's Day bookings? We're not going to tell you ours, and it was all very secretive. And something about that group just drives such collaboration that people will go in and go, has anybody got any bookings for Mother's Day? We're really struggling. And like 20 people will jump in and go, no, we're seeing the same thing, but what we're trying is this. So it's just become this really, I mean, just the loveliest little community. And arguably, like, I mean, Sarah on this call will kind of say it's practically a search engine in there, the stuff that like to talk about. So that's running. So if you're in hospitality marketing or you're a marketing supplier, give me a shout and I'll add you to that one. And the other one is a group called Well-Behaved Women. And it's for women who have quite frankly had enough of this shit. And it just comes from that saying, well-behaved women seldom make history. And I think there's 180 women in that. And really, it's just that if you sit there and think, you're in pretty much mostly in hospitality, but if you're in hospitality or any other sector, and you often have thoughts of, I have had enough of this shit, then that's going to be the group for you. And it's much calmer. It's nowhere near as manic as team marketing is, but it's just there. And it's almost like having 180 women who are all just sort of standing around you, kind of going, go on, you're fine, we've got you. And I just think, I just love both of them. I'm just really proud of both of them, and just so proud of who's in it, because the groups would be nothing without the people who are in it. But yes, but it blows my mind every day that they're still going. It's crazy.
And was it 400, almost 500 people in the marketing one?
Yeah. It's just insane.
Confirming what you said about team marketing, I think.
Oh.
Claire says, can I be added? Yes, Claire, thank you. I'll take a note of your number. And Alan says, thanks so much, Vic, for team marketing. It's the best thing ever.
Oh, thank you for being in it. Honestly, thank you.
Amazing. So I think that's the end of my questions, but I'm going to open to the floor. I think I've got a question here.
Oh, right.
From Claire Priestley. Bear with me, Claire. Sorry, I'm going to try and read your question. Isn't this a sign there is scope for a bigger change ahead to shift this bullshit misogyny? Actually get people like yourself into the CEO position and say this is the correct culture. I keep looking at the business I'm in, and there's a big push for the LGBTQ, but nothing on equality and knowing what a female reaction is and how rational that is. Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And you're totally right. I mean, this industry is so backward. And do you know what really winds me up is that as an industry, we spout it's quite bullshit actually, that we're such people. It's all we talk about. Oh, we're such people in hospitality. We're all about the people. And yet we do less than any other industry to understand our customers. And we do less than any other industry to support and understand the people that work in our businesses. And it's interesting that somebody had asked me to be on a panel about a year ago, and the panel was about what it's like to be gay in hospitality. And I went, well, I don't really know, because it's never really occurred to me as like being a thing that I should be aware of or have a strong opinion on. And it made me really think that how have I spent 30 years in an industry where it's not that I've kept that hidden, I haven't. I certainly haven't gone out of my way to kind of go, absolutely I'm gay. Like, why wouldn't I? I've kind of just gone under the radar. Like a lot of people I know. And I think this industry was the sort of safe, like wholesome industry where it's all about the people that it claims to be. Why have I spent 30 years just somehow subconsciously knowing, just don't say that stuff? Like, you know, why have I had so many toxic environments and experiences that have driven me to the point of near breakdown if we're such people? It's like absolute bullshit. And I agree, Claire. I think we've got to get, you know, people into senior roles, and the sooner we can kind of clear out the old guard of this industry, it's got a fighting chance of surviving. You know, it really has. We've got to be active, and we've got to be relentless in trying to clear it out.
Yeah, definitely. There's a bit of chat going on in here. Paul said, I have been in financial services, InsurTech, for the last 6 years, and it sounds way more advanced than hospitality, possibly because the last two businesses have been led by female CEOs/COOs. So I hope hospitality catches up. And Paul, you used to work in hospitality. I know Paul from my days at Brains Brewery, so experienced both. So interesting that yeah, you've come out of the other side, Paul.
Take us with you, Paul.
Amazing. Are there any other questions at all that you'd like to pop in the chat or on the Q&A? No pressure.
I am unemployable and proud.
Amazing. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I will let everyone get back to their Friday afternoons. I just want to thank you so much, Vic. All of my speakers are doing this out of the goodness of their hearts and imparting their wisdom on everyone else. This has just been a passion project, and I'm just so delighted that I've been able to do it and interview all of these women. It's just been incredible. And no offense to the attendees, but I kind of forget that you're there sometimes. I just think it's been so amazing and feel so inspired. So hopefully everyone has felt like they've got something from today. Next week I'll be chatting to a lady called May, who's joining us from India. She runs her own podcast production company, so if you'd like to come along to that, it'll be on my LinkedIn somewhere, and it'll be at 12 again, so over lunchtime. But thank you everyone saying some really nice things in the chat, Vic. Incredible.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, it's really insightful. Thank you all so much. That means so much. It's just something nice to do. I feel like people thought there was a catch when they were saying it. So there's nice. It's just to share stuff and share the wisdom. So thank you so much, Vic. You've been amazing, and it's always so lovely to talk.
Well, listen, thank you, because I think it's testament to how, you know, much we all think of you, that when you say, will you come and be on a podcast, we sit there, even those of us who feel sick at the thought of it, still go, okay, and do it. So it's down to you. So thank you.
Thank you all so much again, and hopefully see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.